Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This is Abu Hadi from Migration 313, and we're here with Brother Justin, one of our recent reverts to Islam. And to start off, Assalamu alaikum, brother.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi.
So could you start off telling us a little bit about your childhood?
Sure.
Okay.
I was born in Texas on an Air Force base. Moved around a lot. Both my parents were soldiers in the U.S. Army.
Okay.
And we bounced around a good bit. And I grew up Southern Baptist,
Okay.
so Protestant, and was pretty set and in my own life, pretty sectarian in my own kind of way.
Okay.
And I just grew up around the world.
When you were young, what role did religion specifically play in your life?
I mean, I was a church every Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday evening kind of person. So I would say it was relatively important.
Okay.
Both my parents were. My dad was a musician, and both my parents were singers.
Okay.
For the church. So they were pretty into it, and I was really active in the youth group. I guess you could say I was a leader in the youth group, if you want to put it that way. So it was. I didn't have a whole lot of things that I was really into, so that filled up most of my time, I'd say.
Okay.
So.
And then, what did you? And then you said when you became, 18, 19 years old, you joined the military.
I did.
Yeah. And what was your, what was the motivation behind you joining the military?
And
what branch?
I was in the U.S. Army active duty, and I sort of missed it. Both my parents, like I said, were soldiers, and when they got out, I missed kind of I missed the smell of the Army. Okay. It's like this kind of canvasy, oily smell, and I just missed being around, I guess, the uniforms, and I had always wanted to serve, and so I had an opportunity because of a lost opportunity. I had just dropped out of college, and I needed something to do with my life, and I said, well, I know this is always an option. So I went ahead and signed up as an infantryman with the contract to join or to at least get a shot at selection at the U.S. Army Rangers and Airborne School. That was in 2000. That was in April of 2001.
Okay. Did the fact then 9/11 happened after that? I mean, did that? Yeah. How did that change, or did it change your motivation to join?
I mean, I was in Airborne School.
Okay. When it happened.
Yeah. Okay. So, and in the very beginning, we weren't 100% sure, but it was really quick when they were like, "Well, this is an attack," and actually, I graduated selection for the Rangers in November. It was my mother's birthday in November of 2001. Okay. And by December, I was deployed. Okay. So it was pretty quick. I was in a unit that happens to deploy an awful lot. Okay. And they've been deployed nonstop since then. So. Right.
Yeah, I know the Rangers usually they're one of the first ones to go in.
Yeah, they stay busy.
So there's something to happen.
They stay busy.
Yeah. And so when you got in, where were you deployed initially?
My initial deployment was Southwest Asia. Okay. And I could tell you, focused on Afghanistan. Okay. It's about as comfortable as I want to get.
Okay.
So,
you were in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
go ahead. Sorry.
No, it was. I would say it was a lot different than what we expected. I mean, I was stationed in Georgia. Okay. So we were kind of a swampy sort of area, and then the winter of Afghanistan, in the mountains and in the highlands, that was much different than what we thought of, and being with the locals was not really like what you hear. So it was the first time I got to see the other side of the story.
Right. Yeah. It was the first time you were out of the country.
No, I was an adult, but I grew up Louisiana, North Carolina, Japan, and Germany.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
because you were deployed. Oh, yeah, because you were Air Force.
Well, no, both my parents were soldiers, so we bounced around a good bit.
We bounced around Germany, Japan, and stuff. But it's the first time you were ever in a Muslim country.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, the first time. So how did that? experience there, you said it kind of changed your perspective
A little
as
bit.
far as like who Muslims are, and you thought of them before obviously as like most people here as the other, weird, foreign, maybe somewhat
I would say I
yeah.
thought a little worse than that.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, because a lot of people will say, like, our first, the first thing you ever heard about it, our first exposure to it was 9/11, and it's not something that ever crossed your mind before then.
Right.
Like even the word Muslim. I mean, we knew it, Arabs, because we had 1990, 1991. There was Gaddafi. There was all this, and so, but Afghanistan was never something that the average American ever considered, especially since because the only thing we knew about Afghanistan was about 30 seconds of what you hear about them, against the Soviets.
Right.
But going over there, hearing a message and being given a directive of why you go, and then to go see why you go, it's a little bit of disillusionment. The first of 4 times of disillusionment, I'd say. But it was good because I got to see real people. It's an austere environment. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
I'm not gonna call them primitive.
Right.
But I will say that they have the ability to live comfortably, primitively, and that was something that really interested to me because it seemed like you actually got to see actual humanity.
And how was your interaction? I mean, I know you were in the military, and it's kind of hard to like have real interactions with them. But like, how was your interactions with the people?
It was pretty good. I can't tell you where, but I stayed in a village for about a month. We ate with them twice a day. We didn't wear a uniform. We got a little bit shaggy, on the head and on the face, and doing what we called forward observation. And that was really my first foray into really daily interaction with somebody other than me,
other than the people who you grew up around.
And you could consider it a type of cultural immersion.
Okay.
And I mean, we would when we went to work, we went to work with them.
Okay.
And when we wanted to just go, when they went out, we went with them.
Okay.
We ate with them. We played games with them. We socialized with them, and it was pretty neat. I liked it. I mean, I watched Rambo 3 when I was a kid, so it was kind of like it was kind of like that a little bit.
And then what was after your deployment to Afghanistan? How long did that last?
That was pretty
months?
quick. No, that was a quick tour, just over 100 days. I think it was almost 4 months actually.
Okay. And then where'd you go after that?
Went back to Georgia, and the next year I went to Kuwait.
Okay.
In January of 2003, I went to Kuwait, which became Iraq.
Okay.
In March of 2003.
2003.
Yeah, that was the invasion.
The 2003 war.
Right.
Yeah. So you were like, so what happened? You were there in Kuwait, and then you got your orders.
Well, there was something called Operation Desert Spring, which was, from what I understand, it's just like a show force.
Okay.
It's saying, hey, we're here, we got this. And then, the former President George W. Bush gave an ultimatum to Saddam Hussein about weapons of mass destruction and things like that. And the response was Saddam launched some Scud missiles while we were on the Kuwait-Iraq border. Yeah. So that was our answer, when that came. So that was March 17th, maybe, I think. Okay. Pretty the absolute beginning, and that was from the Kuwaiti border all the way to Baghdad. Okay. And then to Fallujah. So.
Okay. And then after that, then you said, let's see, what happened when you were in Baghdad. Then did you stay there, or did you just go in for the initial invasion and then leave?
We were there from March to I want to say August, maybe. Okay. And that went through. We hit all the major towns between Kuwait and Baghdad. We crossed through what they called the Karbala Gap. Okay. And there was Najaf, and a few other towns.
Were you the one of those people there pulling down the Saddam statue? And
No, we have a picture of us when the
Okay.
statue's still up.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, we were there pretty early.
You weren't one of the ones on that.
I think that was the Marine Corps. But,
Okay.
Oddly enough, at the time, the Iraqis were helping them pull it down. They were
Right,
celebrating it too. So
No, I remember
I
I was
think
here
so.
in Dearborn at the time, and people were celebrating on every initially, like you said, they
Yeah.
were celebrating and they were, jumping up and down the streets. Yay, Saddam is gone! All this stuff. And then how did that? I mean, you were there, so you know. I mean, how did that kind of transition into kind of a militia fight? With the U.S.
I mean, from what we understand,
Yeah.
When Saddam fell, I mean, he wasn't captured,
Right.
right off the bat. Like, he was on the run for a while. But when we went in, whether or not we were doing the right thing and for the right reasons, that's kind of beside the point. What we did was pretty much dissolve an entire government,
Right.
and that's not that great,
Right.
because you still have to have these services. We obviously couldn't provide all of them, and then you have an awful lot of soldiers that may not have been loyal to Saddam and his cause, but
Okay.
they're now unemployed.
Right.
And their pride is hurt really bad, because these are educated officers in the
Right.
military, and you just strip them of everything they had.
Right.
So it was kind of rough, and honestly, in Baghdad, the first few months was pretty nice. There came to be a point where we weren't carrying as much ammunition,
Okay.
and we could take our helmets off, and it was very relaxing. We basically go shopping in the markets and handing out candy to the kids.
Yeah, we saw that on the news.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that was enjoyable
Yeah.
to me a lot, and it was comfortable enough that the new slogan we had was, and I'm probably gonna destroy the Arabic here, but like "Ana manda flus" was, like we don't have any money,
Yeah.
because we just spent it all. We didn't get paychecks over there,
Okay.
so, but that was pretty normal. And then things started changing when the units started changing. We started getting new units that didn't participate as much in the invasion,
Okay.
and therefore you would say you have a lot more soldiers that haven't been to combat. And I mean, it's not a morbid thing, but if that's your job, that's what you want to do.
Right.
So it's just kind of a training thing. So you have a lot of guys that haven't done what they signed up for, and now they're there, and things aren't, they're odd when you're there and you don't know what's going on, because a lot of things look scary.
Right.
So you have a lot of new scared guys, and they'll go over the line a bit, and when they, when that happens, you started seeing the change from "thanks for coming" to "when are you guys leaving?"
Yeah.
And that sort of, that was tough to see, getting the smiles and the hugs, and
Right.
every house that you walk by, you get invited in for tea.
Right.
To
People shooting at you.
Yeah, that was, and when people shoot at you in the
Yeah.
invasion, that was normal, but
Right.
it wasn't normal to go from,
Right.
at that hearts and minds stage,
Right.
to losing that battle of hearts and minds.
Right.
And when we left Baghdad, it was just at that level, like things were just starting to change. And we went to Fallujah, where apparently it had
Wow.
always been like that. Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
It was a city that it was.
So you were in Fallujah.
Yeah, it was 180 degrees from Baghdad. It was
Okay.
from the moment we got there to the moment we left. It was not a fun time.
Right.
And which to me was such a stark contrast
Right.
from Baghdad.
Yeah.
And I was like, how is this even the same country?
Right. Right.
Right.
Right.
But sectarianism was not something that we studied.
Did they tell you?
Before
They
we
didn't
left.
tell you when they were debriefing you that, like, a little bit behind it, like the Sunni Shia, how the Sunnis were in control under Saddam, and then they
No,
did
not
they
as-
they didn't tell you?
Not as soldiers,
Okay.
no. No, all we needed to know is we were going to get Saddam and weapons of mass destruction, and
Okay.
that was like, when you're a soldier on the ground, it's best just to know what your job is
Right.
and the jobs of those around you, and not to know much more, because you can be caught in a compromising situation,
Okay.
and maybe it's best that you don't know something.
Yeah. The history behind it.
Well,
Yeah.
maybe it's good that you don't know anything that you can give away.
Okay.
But actually, for anybody that watched the news, they pretty would have known everything that we did, because CNN, NBC, CBS, they were there during our briefings.
You had embedded.
Yeah, which I thought was really odd.
Right.
To have them there and for there to be an almost a live feed. So our families at home were watching the battle for Baghdad. I didn't think that was a great idea.
Yeah.
Because people were killed.
Right.
And I was like, what if their parents...
Were people in your unit? I mean, did you lose
Sure.
people in
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
We had, I would say it was probably a fair mix of hostile fire and friendly fire,
Wow.
and so that was kind of a tough thing to accept, but alhamdulillah.
Yeah. How did that?
Scratches,
How did that experience, like in Fallujah? Because you would think, like, to be in this intense experience, it would actually, some people, come back and they said, we hate Muslims. We hate everything about Islam, because the only thing they know is Muslims were the ones shooting at them.
Yeah.
They don't know. I mean, how did that affect you? Because it obviously affected you in a different way.
I would say it was just confusing, really.
Okay.
Because if you're told something, if you're told that people hate us because you're free and that your women vote,
right,
and like it's simple, like we got TV
because you have 127 channels of cable.
Yeah, like we're happy, we have ice cream, whatever. And there's, we have air conditioning and it's hot over there. I don't know, but when you hear that, it sounds ridiculous, but at the time it sounded good.
Yeah.
And it's very convincing, especially with everything that was happening at the news. I mean,
right.
9/11 was a current event. It wasn't in the past. So if that's all and the USS Cole was not that not that far before that. And I'm sure, as Muslims know,
right,
there's typically the rest of the world only gets one story.
Right.
Because to the victor goes the
spoils.
Victor goes the spoils, and
Yeah.
the victor gets to write the history. And
right.
Where most of the fighters are coming from is of the majority population of
Right.
Of this group that gets to write the history that everybody else reads. But hearing that kind of stuff, and then going over there and maybe not seeing it firsthand.
Right.
Seeing something else, it just confuses you,
Right.
because you naturally don't, you need to hate your enemy.
Right.
That's kind of how that's how you're able to justify the things that you do in a war.
Right.
But on the other hand, when your mind starts opening up the possibilities of maybe this isn't what we're told about, it was just a weird situation, and I think a lot of us, suffered far more psychologically and emotionally than physically, because Fallujah, it wasn't like people were dying every day on our
Right.
side. You get shot at a lot, no doubt, but it was more of a it was more of a just always being on the edge, because it
Right.
was just a kind of city that made you nervous.
You never knew where it was going to come
No,
from.
it was. I mean, it was the weird thing about combat in real life is it is a 360 degree. It's like there's like 4 dimensions of it.
Right.
I mean, you have what you can see, but there's also high and low.
Right.
And in Fallujah, you gotta, that was a complete experience. I would say, because it is all around you.
That's how you could probably describe it.
Yeah, you're walking in a bubble, and that
Yeah.
bubble surrounds you completely, and you never really know where it was going to come from. But
So what made you? So like, when did you start getting? Like you said, before that happened. Okay, so now you're out of Fallujah. That's over. Your deployment ends. Now you're back in the States.
yeah,
And now what happened next?
well, you just keep sucking at life, basically. I mean, it's well, we just kind of you just the rest of that time was just trying to figure out how to deal with it.
Okay.
That was before the military really got into this whole
PTSD thing.
yeah, and redeployments,
Right.
and coming back and learning how to get back in this.
So what year was this? I mean,
This is 2003.
2003. You came back.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you deal with it your own way, and for our own way was substance abuse.
Right.
That's how you get over it.
It's very common.
Yeah, and honestly, at the time,
Yeah.
you don't understand that you're doing it to get over anything.
Right.
You're just doing it because, because it feels fun.
Right.
But there is that benefit of when you're inebriated,
Right.
you're not really in the world.
Right.
And
you don't have to deal with.
yeah, and so it starts off recreational and fun, but then in short order it becomes what's comfortable. Okay. And you realize, like, hey, when when I'm out of it, I don't hurt and I don't think about this stuff as much. So let's stay like this.
Okay. That's when you started like learning about Islam.
I had kind of started in, I'd say late 2009, early 2010. Okay. Because I knew some Muslims that were really decent people, and so to me that was the flip side of the Muslim question I had. And they did a lot of good da'wah, but my goal was to figure it out, to fight it. Right. Know your enemy. So I wouldn't say I got heavily into it, but I studied it, and I was also a really angry person. Right. And I got through life by being drunk. That doesn't make you really happy. That was my first real venture into sobriety. Yeah. And when you have a clear head, things get different. Right. And when I started, the way I looked at it was, since I was trying to fight it anyway, I was trying to disprove this religion, and that's kind of how I went to go about proving it. Right. If I can't say that it's not real, then it must be real, kind of thing. Yeah. So I would, I would do a lot of debates with people, and I would read a lot of books. Right. And you had the time then. Yeah, I read the Quran in full, like it was in English anyway, and I just kind of compared it to what I was on, and what I didn't really believe with my whole heart anymore, and I said, well, it's not really what everybody thinks it is, because when you think of Islam, you just, growing up here, you don't think great things. So, what was like the turning point? Was there a specific day, a specific like ayah in the Quran that you read, or was it a specific person? Was it, usually like with people who revert, it's usually centered around a specific, like either incident or person or thing that you read. Is there something like that? Or was it? It was Jesus, man. Really? Yeah. And it was weird because my kind of thing was I was trying to do the right thing, and I wanted to do better. The idea of trying to be a wholesome, good Christian was to follow Jesus. Right. And the more I studied Jesus in the Bible, regardless of studying him in the Quran, but you started to read the Bible. More. I had studied the Bible. I did a correspondence course when I was in jail. But the more I read, the more I focused on the actions of Jesus in particular in the Bible. In order to better follow him, I saw that the path that I was on was not following Jesus. It was following, St. Paul. Right. Saul of Tarsus. Yeah, and I said, this is a problem, because to me, if I compared the theology of Saul with the theology of Jesus, or even James, or some of the disciples, I saw a different theology in total. And I said, well, I can't follow both if this is supposed to follow this. And so I had to kind of, it sounded strange, but for me to follow Jesus better, I kind of had to disregard a good portion of the book that speaks about him. Right. But I did find him in the Quran. Right. And I said, this message does not go against anything that Jesus actually talked about in the Bible. Right. And I said, let me give this a shot. And to me it made more sense And you know, part of it was just you have to learn some historical context. Like a lot of people have, you know, and I have the same thing too. When people say like, well, your Prophet Muhammad, he was like a warmonger and a pedophile, and that's, you know, I don't know how you call it a warmonger. If people are literally always attacking you and you're having to defend yourself all the time, that's not really a warmonger.
Yeah, you're just kind of defending.
Yeah, that's a peacemonger.
Right.
And calling him as a pedophile to me was interesting.
Yeah.
Because, and this is before I was even a Muslim, and I was like, oh, this doesn't make sense because this is over 1,400 years ago.
Right.
And the big thing to me was like, there's not really there's not a unanimous consensus even on the age of the person that we're talking about. Right. You know, 6, 9, 16, 19. People just don't get it. But I told somebody when you started looking at history, I said, let's just say she was 6, right? And let's say that it was completed at 9. Right. Well, less than 200 years ago, in the United States of America, the legal age of consent was as low as 7 years old in Delaware. Right. So I said, that's 2 years younger than 1,200 years later. Right. And somehow we never call our forefathers pedophiles. Yeah.
Also, they're doing it in lunar years, not solar years. So she was actually, you find out later that that's only one hadith. Yeah, and then there's 15 hadiths that say she was 16 or 17.
Yeah, and it's funny because you got to read when you compare the hadiths that she says. Which I mean, I don't know. I don't want to get because we'll get into sectarianism real fast with that. You know, but it was this is what I did. I went with every argument that I had. And I went to prove those arguments, and I wound up disproving them. And once that happened, that was kind of the end of it. You know, I would say, unfortunately, the Jamaat that was there, you know, they call themselves Salafis. Salafis, right? So, which meant you had plenty of opportunity for study, you know, because they read a lot. But and it was definitely like a run before you can walk kind of thing. You know, I became a Muslim, and less than a week later was my first Ramadan.
Alhamdulillah. What year was this?
2013.
2013.
I want to say June.
Okay.
The end of June. Yeah. So that was interesting, man. Yeah. And it was, you know, it was tough because if that's the Islam you're studying, if that's the only, like, you know better because you've seen the goodness, but that's the only Islam you're being taught was this version of Salafis. And I mean, it was kind of tough to deal with, but you know, once you realize that there is truth in a message, you know, for me, I'd always been kind of able to file away stuff, and what I had to do is, you know, I believed in the general principle of Islam. And any disagreements I had with the Salafis, I had to accept them as part of the bigger picture that maybe I didn't comprehend. So I you know, I did not do it in moderation. You know, I went all the way on it. You know, it was tough.
But then eventually, what made you, like, what steered you away from that, like, towards the path? Towards the path.
Was reading. You know, there is a translation of a book from Bukhari, and it's called Manners and Morals of a Muslim. And there's a 30-page introduction. And I read the introduction, and it talked about the dangers of studying ahadith without guidance, that it could lead you into like a spiritual fitna. Okay. And I kind of looked around me and I said, that's legit. Yeah. And you know, and I asked some of the guys there, I said, did you guys read this? He said, yeah, hey, it's a beautiful book. Yeah. I said, did you read the introduction? Yeah. Like, I ain't got time for that. I said, maybe you should, you know. And so I got in touch with my mother and had her make copies of that introduction. And I passed it around, and I got in trouble for skipping chain of command. You know. Oh. Yeah, so like they were mad at me that I was proselytizing, you know, this information. That was one of their own books. Right. And so it was between that and then, you know, there's a Sunni American scholar called Hamza Yusuf. Yeah, I know. So, and I'd listen to every lecture of his I could find. I'd read his books, you know, and he was proponent of Maliki fiqh.
Right.
And I got pushed towards him on accident, I think, because everybody was like, "Oh, he's just a Sufi. He's a kafir," you know.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, he says he's a Maliki, so I have to believe what the man says. You call yourself a Muslim.
Yeah.
And so I kind of, I was just getting angry at these guys for saying that everything was bid'ah, everything was haram, everybody
was kafir.
And even the people, what got me was the people that were lifelong Muslims.
Yeah.
Were just shaking their heads and like, what is this?
Right.
But on the other hand, a lot of them knew what Salafis were, and they would just roll their eyes like, these guys, you know? And it turned into just seeing like you had a lot of angry young men that were in really bad situations in life.
Right.
Not a whole lot of knowledge, but a whole lot of zeal. And that can be a very dangerous combination.
Yeah.
And what got me was when late 2013, I believe, maybe early 2014, Daesh started making a lot of airwaves.
Right.
And these guys started getting really excited about it.
Wow.
Yeah, and it initially started as getting excited about fighting for Syria and Iraq, but then it became, because they were fighting Assad, like that's what they liked.
That's their main thing.
Yeah, but once once Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, declared himself the Khalifa, they were like, these guys are ready to pledge bay'ah.
Wow.
And I was like, I don't know about this, because I was starting to read a hadith about, it was about the Khawarij.
Right. Okay, so you found out.
Yeah, so I was like, this is super close. Okay, he's using the kunya, they got the hair, they got the flag, they got the speech, the skin color, and the actions are exactly the same. I was like, this might be like one of these things, and leave it alone is was the thing. So
So you started studying other.
It wasn't a place where I wouldn't say it was not a Jamaat that was accepting of you studying something else.
Right.
I remember I trimmed my beard, and the imam told me I was guilty of shirk.
Yeah.
I mean, you laugh, but it's that happened, and I asked him. I said, "Do you know what that means?" He said, "Yeah, it's describing part." I said, "How is this shirk?"
Yeah.
And he said, "Because you're glorifying your face instead of glorifying the sunnah." And I said, "All right."
Yeah.
Subhanallah. I was like, I said, it's like haram to say that things are haram, but they're not haram though. But so that's kind of how my last few months were. It was a bit shaky. So I just had to bide my time, and I'd ask him questions every now and then. I said, "What do you think about 9/11?" And he'd say, "Alhamdulillah." And I was like, this guy, So I just had to go.
Man.
Then I found a masjid in Lake Charles, Louisiana.
Okay.
That's where my halfway house was. So I started attending, Jummah there and going to every function I could.
Okay.
And there's kind of this thought of, like in Shias when you do taqleed, you need to have a marja. Generally speaking, Sunni scholars will tell you that you need to have a madhab.
Yeah.
Like, so you should follow something. And I was in the search, for it, and I was looking around. I was like, well, let's not do Salafis.
Right. So you check that off the list.
Yeah, and I was already watching Hamza Yusuf, and so I started learning about the Maliki fiqh. Yeah, so I started reading, Imam Malik's Risala, and I said, I could do this. It made more sense to me than some of the others. There's some weird things, like according to the Maliki fiqh, a Hanafi's wudu might not be any good. So I was like, let me stick with the hardest one. And he seemed to be kind of one of the originals of these types of people. And I studied him really hard and did classes, and I got to his breakdown of prayer and, the debate over Qad and Sad, arms up or arms down. And, he was a fan of arms down.
Right.
He saw the Tabi'un, and the Shi'at Ali did it. And, it was kind of strange where people may not have have respected the Shia,
Mm-hmm.
and they may not have felt that they were real Muslims.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of hard to negatively judge the prayer
Right.
of people because they have, you
Yeah.
know, they have the lineage of the prayer.
Right.
So it's
Right.
like there can't be no argument. And then I got to his teacher, you know, when I
Right.
saw
Imam Sadiq.
I saw Imam Jafar al-Sadiq,
Yeah.
and I saw a person that both sides
Right.
appreciated, and I was like, well, why am I learning from a student if I can learn from a teacher?
Right.
Let me learn this. And
Alhamdulillah. Yes.
that led to a lot of questions,
Right.
a lot of questions. And I was talking to my imam,
Right.
not the shirt guy,
Right.
my imam,
The
yeah,
Lake Charles.
my
imam.
free life imam. And I was asking him about prayer, and it's kind of strange when you come, you know, when you come as a Salafi, just leaving Salafis and just trying to be Sunni. Every day you get, mashallah, look at all this
Right,
knowledge for
yeah.
this man, because you spend
Yeah.
a year and a half in a library.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all you do is you're
Right.
just reading. So you can debate people all day
Right,
long.
right.
So it went from so much knowledge to, you know, Sheikh, let me ask you about this prayer thing. He's
Yeah.
like, you know, he doesn't want to talk about it now.
Yeah.
You know, don't worry. He goes, if you want to learn about prayer, just read Sheikh Al-Albani.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I
Yeah.
can't go back to Albani. You know, I can't
Yeah.
go back to this. So this was something that I was going to have to do on my own. And oddly enough, this imam didn't really believe in madhabs, which I thought was strange
Right.
for an imam that
Right.
says that he wasn't Salafi, you know. So I just went with it, and I said, well, I just started praying with my arms down. I thought the evidence was better for it,
Right.
you know. Even in the Sunni hadith,
Right.
I thought the evidence was better. Not so much just to pray with your arms down, but not to pray with your arms forward.
Right.
So I said, let me do this. And then the more I studied about Jafar, the more interested I got in the Shia thing. Because, you know, when I left the Salafis, I wasn't super sectarian. I didn't think that Shia were the kuffar anymore. I just thought maybe slightly deviant.
They're another sect.
Yeah, like
any
you
other
know.
one, like Sufis or like whatever.
Well, and I'll tell you why. There's a little bit of perennialism going on in my heart.
Right.
Because when you read about the Al-Kitab
Right.
in Jannah,
Right.
maybe you're like, I think we're all going to get surprised one day.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, what is he doing here? Like, I thought, like, nope. You know, so I had to learn to try to accept people at my own pace. And, you know, when I got out of prison, I decided, you know, let me just try to be happy and not be miserable. And part of that is I got to stop hating people.
Right.
You know, there's plenty of things you can hate.
Right.
You can hate situations.
Right.
You can hate poverty.
Right.
You know, you can hate disease.
Right.
You know, there's not much point in hating people.
Right.
So I just started asking questions, and of course, like everybody, I asked the people around me, and there was not a lot of good, you know, opinions about the Shia, and so I made a conscious decision to, if I had a question about somebody, I have to ask them.
Right.
I can't ask somebody else. So if I want to learn about you, I'll just ask
Right.
you, and that works for me.
Okay. It's logical.
It is,
Yeah.
yeah, but there's resistance to
Right.
it, you know, because I would tell my friends, you know, the imams or whatever, like, I'm gonna ask, you know, I want to know about these Shia. They're like, well, don't talk to them. They do like taqiyya, they'll lie to you. And you know, my thought was like, you know, but I've heard Christian ministers said the same thing
Right.
about you guys.
Right.
Like, don't talk to Muslims because they'll lie to you.
Right.
And I said, you know,
Yeah.
you're no better.
Right. Right.
So I just went with it, and actually I visited here last year,
Right.
kind of on a spiritual journey kind of thing.
And you like the food, so you just like.
Yeah. Well, I've always been kind of a fan of I've been eating mansaf since before I was a Muslim.
Okay.
So
All right. That's cool.
yeah, I've always had a thing for tabbouleh.
Okay, yeah. That's what brings most people here initially.
Yeah.
The tabbouleh and the shawarma. And
You know, I mean, we had that in
Yeah.
Louisiana, but I just there wasn't Shiites that I knew
Right.
about, and I knew a person here, and you know, and I knew of one of the imams that's pretty prominent. I had
Right.
seen him on the news, and I said, well,
Sheikh Hisham Hussein.
no, actually, I met him last night.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're both convinced that we've met before. But,
Okay.
it was actually Syed Hassan Kazwini.
Okay.
Yeah, I had seen him with like a local Fox interview
Right.
with Terry Jones.
Right.
And I said,
That was a couple of years ago. Yeah.
yeah. And my thing was this, what I saw in that
Right.
was the same thing that I was facing every day.
Right.
Because their point was, Terry Jones is saying this, and this about Islam and Quran and Sharia being what he thinks it is, while at the same time saying he doesn't know what any of those are.
Right. Okay.
And then he says, but experts tell me.
Right.
But at no point did he ever ask the imam a question.
Exactly.
And they made a point to say, you keep saying experts, you have one right here. Why don't you ask him?
Exactly.
And there's just no answer. And I'm like, mashallah, I hear that every day. Like, that's what my life is.
Yeah.
Because I'm arguing with people.
I watched the same interview as you.
Okay,
and
there
Terry
you go
Jones
then.
kept saying, "We got to fight the jihad. We got to fight the jihad."
Fight
like,
the jihad.
That's all he was saying.
Stop the Islam.
Because he said, "Let me ask you a question."
Yeah.
He didn't want to answer.
What is jihad to you?
Oh, and then
Jihad
a post log to that. I don't know if you know about that. Right after the interview, he went out in his car. He took out his gun and he literally shot himself in the foot. I mean, most people don't know that.
Really?
Yeah, literally shot himself in the foot.
Say wallah. No.
Wallah, yeah.
I did not know that at all.
Yeah.
And then, I think there was another interview with another pastor. I
Right.
think later on, another guy that he brought all kind of stuff.
Right.
It was like a Ross Perot kind of
Yeah.
thing. You thought there was going to be a big old sucking
Right.
sound.
So one last, I just wanted to one last
go
question
ahead.
for you. So we got to wrap it up. One last question is, how did your army buddies and how did your family react
I tell you this,
to the fact that you're
the army buddies that I fought with
right?
in the war, I'd say, there's a few that I've kept close friendships with.
Okay.
And they're my, we consider each other brothers.
Right.
And so they don't care.
Okay.
It wasn't easy on my family. And I would say the hardest part of anybody was the path that I put all these people through.
Right.
Had I come to be a Muslim here,
Right.
in this,
Dearborn. Yeah.
or in this situation,
Right.
and at this kind of, with this kind of, ideology,
Right.
probably would have been a lot easier for them to accept.
Oh.
But becoming a Salafi, that put my parents through like a hell on earth.
Yeah.
Because I said some crazy things. I was
Right.
calling them Zalimun,
Wow.
and Kufar.
Right.
I was calling, and it was just rough. I mean, I had this big shaggy beard that I was brushing
Right.
out. I was growing my hair long, and I was a very hateful person.
Right.
And, I was calling everybody a kafir.
Yeah.
And I was preaching positive messages about Daesh. So it was bad
Right.
for my family. I think now it's nice because it's I'm sober and I'm relatively happy, and that has not been a combination in my life for
good.
many years.
That's good.
And
Do you find your relationships, like with your mother and father, they're getting better? Or?
yeah,
Okay.
part of that is I just want to be a decent person on one hand. Then on the spiritual side, you kind of have to, right?
You have to in the Quran. It says you have to respect.
I mean, if paradise is under my mom's feet, I want to be there.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and it's they're going to come visit soon. They asked me like, why Michigan? Why not like California
It's too
or
cold up
Colorado?
there
That's
and
exactly
all.
what they said. That's why they're waiting till August.
Well, yeah,
So,
being from Louisiana, I can see why they would. Say
yeah.
that,
So it's alhamdulillah, the
Alhamdulillah.
mosquitoes seem a lot less
Yeah.
abundant up here than down there.
So just one last question.
Sure.
What advice would you give if you would to give like a piece of advice to people who like are interested in Islam or who just became Muslim? What would you want to tell them? Because this is your chance to tell them right now.
Honestly, I mean, it'd be a lot easier just to ask the people directly.
Really?
And I would look. I'm going to say ask the right people.
Right.
If you're around these, on my personal level, these Shia masajid, then then by all means just go there. Typically the doors are open.
Right.
Go on a Friday afternoon,
Right.
and it's the Ramadan right now.
Yeah.
Go now. Get some food while you're at it.
Yeah.
It's don't expect ham slices,
Right.
but it's the lessons I learned. I know I learned them well though.
Right.
So if you're gonna have to go, if you're gonna take the same path I did,
Right.
I hope your intestinal fortitude is good, but just be patient. I mean, it doesn't come easy, but you know, you have to make a decision where are you going to do what's right, even if it means your life's going to be a lot more difficult, or you know, like the deen or dunya, right? And it's kind of half-half,
right?
You know, we got to live in the dunya, but
right.
I don't know. I mean, I would hate to give anybody advice that's soul searching. You know, this is right. I'm going to say this is right for me.
Right.
You know, it's right for everybody, but it took me. It was a hard road getting here.
One of my
perhaps you should ask somebody that had
one of my mentors, kind of along line. One of my mentors when I first became Muslim, he told me the first thing he told me when he said, I want you to do one thing. He said, don't accept contradictions.
Yeah.
If something's a contradiction, don't accept it.
And that was
that's like one.
I mean, when you try to prove something, sometimes
right.
the best thing to do is to try to disprove it first.
Right.
And I will stress this. You know, maybe this line of thought isn't for everybody, but if you can't explain why you believe something, maybe you should be believing it.
Right.
And you know, I'm not saying don't believe in God or something, but know why you do. I mean, and if you don't, you know. So I'm probably going to get yelled at for saying this. If you're not doubting your faith, you're probably not taking your faith seriously.
Yeah. No, that's perfectly legitimate. Everybody questions it sometimes.
Yeah, and that's kind of because I refuse to believe that I've reached a pinnacle.
Right.
So I know there's always somewhere. I know there's always a higher plane that I can reach, and for me, just to inshallah, for me to if I don't understand it. Or if I have a problem with some of the doctrine, I don't just accept it and say, okay, I have to learn about it. And sometimes there's things that I stick to the wajib, but sometimes there's some nafila that I don't because I don't completely understand it. And I have to be fair to myself. I don't want to do something that I don't really know, because I don't want to just go through the motions. So, I would say, do that, and part of the motivation is you get to do more. Once you learn what they are and if you believe it. But if you're, can I recommend a book?
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. There's a book called After the Prophet by Leslie Hazelton, and I would say if you're already a Muslim but don't know much about the history of the Shia, I would recommend that book. I mean, that was one of the turning points for me, honestly. It was a secular Jewish woman wrote a book.
It happens that way sometimes.
And that pushed me towards really diving in to wanting to understand the Shia, the philosophy of it. And it's a good. It tells you about the history of what happened, because as a Sunni, you never learned that. And it's because here's the thing: all we know about is Hajj. 3-4 million people, every year somebody dies or gets hurt. You never hear about Arba'in. 20 to 25 million people, and people get fed and get their laundry done, in Iraq, in a war zone. And so it's like, how does all this happen? How do we not know?
Largest gathering of people in the history of human.
And it's not just Shia, it's Sunni, it's Jews, it's Christians, it's Hindus, it's Buddhist. I mean, it's atheists, like everybody, because, and that's the thing, the story of these martyrs, like that's what if you're on the fence, if you're just trying to learn about Islam, I mean, learn about these guys first. Like, learn the human equation of this spiritual math problem. And start there, because we are people, so it's easier for us to comprehend. It's kind of hard to comprehend things like infinity, So focus on what's real that you can touch and see and feel, and it'll still guide you there.
Okay, thank you, brother. Assalamu alaikum.